so correct that I could not turn except to only what's pure. And thus Allah makes it clear. وَمَن يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَن يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. Whoever seeks other than Islam as a religion, total submission to Allah, it will not be accepted. وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Adam alayhi salam had his son, he had his sons. In fact, the older son was Qabil. Qabil is the older son. And you know, the problem people when it comes to seniority, and you see this so often, where sometimes you might have two sons, and the second son is fitter for taking over the family business than the older son. But you know what will happen there? The older son's not going to stand for it, because they have this thing where I'm the senior one, I'm entitled to this. This is my entitlement. And Qabil had this, and thus he would split off from what was the righteous path. And throughout your life, you'll find every time a new prophet would come, there would be people that would split off. They would split off. They say, hold on, we don't believe in this, we believe in that, we don't believe in this, we believe in this or that. Now, you don't need to be an expert to work out what's right and what's wrong. I'll just give you a few guidelines before we move on. Anything you find suspicious, stay away from it. Suspicious straight away. If there's something with question marks, if I ask people, there's question marks all around it, whoever I ask, I'd stay away from it. I remember one of the brothers I met who was studying in the Hausa, and he told me, I used to do my taqleed of this marja, and he named him. He said, but I stopped and I changed. I said, what was the reason you changed? You know, because with taqleed there's rules. He said, the fact is, every time I mention this marja's name, everyone will say, how did you end up following this guy? He said there was too many people that would say it. Yani, you got to have rocks in your head not to realize there's alarm bells ringing. Everyone says, you know, I'm talking about good, righteous people. I'm saying, how did you come to this conclusion? Are you really seeking to be saved? So when I see something has a lot of question marks around it, stay away from it. Someone comes and says, listen, I've got some secret knowledge. Yeah, keep your secrets to yourself. Because the Quran was for the world. Anyone that wants to take you to a little chamber to teach you something secret, leave him. You know? There's nothing good when someone wants to take you somewhere secretly. That's all these cults. How do you think cults work? It's always, why is it only us 35 people that are cool and everyone else is going to hell? Anyone who wants to take you to a little cabin somewhere in the woods, nothing's good's going to happen there. Trust me. So I'd abstain from this at all places. And this is what happened throughout history. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam says in a hadith that's clear as crystal. This hadith is mentioned even in Sahih Bukhari, that my commandment, this Islam, is not complete until 12 commanders, 12 caliphs, 12 leaders will come from Quraysh. They're the ones that are going to carry this message. And then you said the people say, listen, there was the Rashidun Caliphs, then there was the Umayyad Caliphs, then the Abbasid Caliphs, and then the Uthmani Caliphs. This is the way that they split it out. That's the Caliphate. But how many was there in each group? Was it 12? It was hundreds. So where did these 12 go? And this is what happened after with those that followed Ahl al-Bayt, alayhim as-salam. There were those that accepted Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Hasan al-Mushtaba, Imam al-Hussein. Then when it came to Ali ibn al-Hussein alayhi salam, Ali ibn al-Hussein had a son called Zayd ibn Ali, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhi, who was a righteous man, who revolted against the Umayyads, and he was killed in one of the harshest manners. And his body was left, they hung his body until they say even the birds nested in his rib cage. Inside there, the birds made a nest. That's how long his body was out there. There were these people that followed him and refused to accept the imamah of Imam Mohammed Al alayhi salam afterwards. Because they had an idea that every imam must go to war. Rasulullah was at war, Amir al-Mu'mineen was at war, Imam Hassan was in war, Imam Hussein was in war, Ali ibn al-Hussein was in war, and Zayd ibn Ali was in war. Muhammad ibn Ali didn't go to war. So Muhammad ibn Ali is not the imam. So they became the Zaydis. They had their own sect. They splintered off and started again because their measurement was based on going to war. If that was the case, then Nabi Adam isn't a prophet, he didn't go to war. Nabi Nuh wasn't a prophet, he didn't go to war. Nabi Musa wasn't he did go to war, but Nabi Ibrahim didn't go to war. So you could cut out, Nabi Isa didn't go to war. So all these prophets are gone because they didn't go to war. So based on their idea, they made their own splinter group and they split from the actual group because they didn't follow this. Likewise, when it came to the further splitting groups, we got to Imam al-Sadiq, those that were still on Safinatul Najat, they were on the ship of salvation or the ark of salvation. They got to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam al-Sadiq's oldest son was who? We call Imam al-Sadiq Abu what? Abu Abdullah. His oldest son was a man by the name of Abdullah al-Aftah. Abdullah al-Aftah had a broad forehead and he wasn't too bright. Abdullah came out and told everyone, I am the Imam after Imam al-Sadiq. I'm the one that will be the Imam. So when Imam al-Qadhim questioned him, he got up and he left. He was unable to answer the questions because he wasn't the Imam. And he died on this dalal. And when it came to this, there were people that ended up following him as the Imam. They were called Al-Fatahi. That they followed Abdullah al-Aftah and they believed he was the next Imam after Imam al-Sadiq. Then the Imam had another son, and this son died during Imam al-Sadiq's time. This son was a good man. Abdullah wasn't a good man, but Ismail was a good man. Ismail ibn Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam was a good man. He died during the time of the Imam. The people assumed he was the Imam, and they were called the Ismailis. Another group that would split off. Even though the Prophet, like you imagine, the Prophet says there's 12 Imams. Just go back to, it's like when someone gets into a boxing match. And during the fight, they're taking control of. What are they supposed to do? Go back to using their jab. Go back to the basics. And get control of the fight so you're back in control. Go back to the basics. Tawheed, Nubuwah, and Imamah. Go back to the basics. What is it that I was told from the start? Don't go off with these groups. Don't split off. And this is what happened with the Ismailis. They didn't go back to the basics. The Prophet said 12 Imams. And I've only got 7 here. Something's not right. So that was the next splinter group that came out. There was another man afterwards, Marwan ibn Ziyah and Ali ibn Hamza al-Bata'ini. And these lives, they were called Waqfiyah. And these were people that claimed that Imam al-Qadhim was not killed. Like the Christians that believe that Jesus rose from the dead, and they have the opinion, and they followed this, and they continued, so they made a religion out of it, that he was crucified. These guys believed Imam al-Qadhim wasn't killed. Relax. They made their own sect from believing what? That the Imam was the Imam, the 7th Imam was Imam al-Ghaib, that he will return, and they called the Waqfiyah. And these were the strongest of all the splitting groups. You know that. They were the strongest because they had a very strong argument. What was that argument? That the imamah is passed on from one to the other. That an imam, one of the conditions for the imam to have imama is that they have to have a child. That's one of the conditions, because it will be begotten from him to the next. The eighth holy imam, Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, was over 40 years old and he had no children. So at this point, everyone's saying, hold on, these waqfis with Imam al-Qadim, they're right. Ali ibn Musa isn't the imam. If he was the imam, he would have a child. And that was one of the biggest arguments they had against him. In fact, one of the narrations where Al-Husayn ibn Yasar and Al-Husayn ibn Qiyamah come to Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, and they ask him a question. They say to him, تخلو الأرض من أن يكون فيها إمام? Is it possible that the earth would exist or would be without an imam? Is it possible? And we have a hadith that if there is no representative of Allah on the earth, we would all be destroyed, because the earth will not allow someone that disobeys Allah to be on it. And for the sake of your imam, which why we do dua for his protection every day, is our existence. So we ask Allah, because imam's presence is what gives us this protection. So they ask Imam Rida, is it possible that the earth can be without imam? You know, some people, they don't believe in Imam al-Hujjah, Imam al-Mahdi, Ajallah Farajahu Sharif. Some say he wasn't born. Some say he was born much later. Some say he's still not born yet, you know. So this faragh from Imam Hasan al-Askari to when he's going to be born, as they say, there's no imam. And this is against all the narrations that mention that there is a hujjah on the earth. There's an authority for Allah on the earth. They ask him first, would the earth be without an imam? And the imam says, no, no. And then they said, فَيَكُونُ فِيهَا اثْنَانِ? Can the earth have more than one imam at once? The imam says, لا. إِلَّا وَأَحَدُهُمَا صَامِتٌ لَا يَتَكَلَّمُ. He said, no, there can't be two imams at once. There's only one authority at once. He said, unless the two of them, one of them does not speak. There's once a hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, he says to the companions, what is ma huwa awwalu ni'ma? What is the first blessing? And all of them jump up, you know, one says marriage, one says money, one says gold, one says, they're all talking about all the, and they're all responding except one of them is sitting there. One amongst them doesn't speak. And that's Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, hasn't said a word. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi says, Ya Abul Hassan, you have not given your opinion like your companions, the ones that are present. And the Imam says to him, Fidaka abi wa ummi. May my mother and my father be sacrificed for you. Innama nahnu nahtadi bik. We are the ones that are supposed to be guided by you, not us guide you. We get guided by you. Who are we to give our opinion in your presence, Ya Rasulullah? This is what we mean. The Imam, who is Bab Madinatul Ilm, he's the doorway to the knowledge of Rasulullah, does not become active, even though Rasulullah says, Anta khalifati fi hayati wa ba'da mawti. You are always the Imam before and after I am gone. Yet he is inactive. The active one is when Imam Hassan and Hussein were around. Imam Hassan was active. He's the one that speaks. The other one is what? Samit. We say inactive in the sense, not activated in their position. It's not inactive, not activated. One is activated in the role of leadership. The other one's not activated until they are told, now Just like when people say Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam became a prophet at 40 years old. That's not true. He activated this authority that he had already taken with Allah previously. So then they say to him, actually Hussein ibn Qiyam is saying this because Hussein ibn Yasar is the one narrating this. He says, فَقَالَ al-Hussein, he says, فَقَدْ عَلِمْتَ أَنَّكَ لَسْتَ بِإِمَامٍ. So Hussein ibn Qiyam says to Imam al-Rida that you are not an Imam. And the Imam says, وَمِنْ أَيْنَ عَلِمْتَ? From what did you know this? He says, إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ لَكَ وَلَدٌ وَإِنَّمَا فِي الْعَقِبِ. Yani the Imams, he says, you don't have a child, and we've been told that the children of the Imams are one after the other. After Imam Hussein alayhi salam, it's the son of. He says, you don't have a child, and the imamah is in this manner, so you're not the imam. Someone else is. It's not you. See, he wants to prove that Imam al-Qadhim is the imam and the final imam, and everything else is in secrecy, because he's in his ghaibah. So then the imam says to him, فَوَاللَّهِ لَا تَمْضِي الْأَيَّامُ وَاللَّيَالِ حَتَّى يُولَدَ لِي ذَكَرٌ مِّن صُلْبِي يَقُوبُ مثل مقامي يحق الحق ويمحق الباطل. He said, it's only a few days and nights, leave it, and from me will come a son that will take my position. He will uphold the truth, and he will destroy the fallacies. He will destroy whatever is alive. So he mentions, thus Imam Al Jawad alayhi salam is the pivotal Imam that removes the doubt of the doubters. When he is born, it ends all doubt that there is. It ends all suspicion. But there still has to be a test to this. See, many people at the time, and even some people today, refuse to say he was the one that murdered Imam al-Rida. They won't implicate him in the murder. Some even go to the point to say that he was a Shia, which is all a lie. Abdullah al-Ma'mun was accursed. And in order to justify that he didn't kill Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, he called for Imam Al Jawad to come from Medina. Imam Jawad was 8 or 9 years old. Brought him from Medina to Tus in order to marry him to his daughter al-Fadl. Why would he do this? See, the Abbasides were already, Banu al-Abbas were already angered with Ma'mun for bringing Imam al-Rida to Tus. But now bringing Imam Jawad, they were very upset with him. He said, listen, firstly, I exonerate myself from killing Imam al-Rida by bringing Imam al-Jawad and marrying him to my daughter. You know, everyone will know that I didn't kill his father. You know, I'm a well-wisher and I'm here to prove my innocence with this murder. And the other things I can expose this imamah thing is not a thing because he's young. And I'll expose that they don't have this knowledge. See, this is where the imamat of Imam al-Jawad is more effective here than the imamat of Imam al-Rida. When I say more effective, I'll explain what I mean. Imam al-Rida came to Tus and he was old. So everyone will say he must have studied all these years to have this knowledge. They won't understand that this is ilm ladunni, this is from Allah. But with Imam al-Jawad at 8 or 9, where did he get this knowledge? So if I put him to talk, there's no way where someone could say, oh, he was studying in the best universities, the best. No, this is an 8-year-old child. To put him forward and to question him in this position and see what his knowledge was like. The great scholar, Yahya ibn Aktham, when I say great scholar, he was one of the greatest scholars in the Sunni world at the time of Banu al-Abbas. Like, he was the most knowledgeable. He admitted himself that he was no match for Muhammad ibn Ali al-Jawad. After he had a discussion with him, he said, I've got nothing to say to this. This child is too knowledgeable. So even he conceded at this point. See, when we look at the character of Muhammad ibn Ali Al Jawad, it's been prophesied, his birth has been prophesied from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. To the point the Prophet begins by talking about his mother. And Rasulullah says, Bi Abi ibnu khiratil ima. See, one of the things the Jews always attack the Muslims with, they say that Ishaq was the son of a free woman, Sarah, whereas Ismail was the son of a bondsmaiden, Hajar. That's what they say. Like, and we, to have a child from a bondsmaiden, they look at it as in Hedi Abdi. You know, she's a servant, slave, and this person was born from a slave. That doesn't have this value. Whereas in the case, a lot of the Imams were, their mothers were Walad. Their mothers were bondsmaiden. And of them was Sabika and Nubiya or Nubiya. She was the mother of Imam Al Jawad. Nubiya means what? It means Nubian. You know, Nubians in Africa, they're especially dark. And you know, when people sit there and think Imam al Baqir or someone thing, a lot of people don't. as a habitual gambler, alcoholic, and he was a murderer, a great murderer. He massacred so many people. Of the people he murdered was Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam, the Imam. Now, when you look at this family tree of Al-Ma'mun, uh, of Harun, Harun had three sons, and each one was, if you like, you look at decadence, each one was more decadent than the one. When I say decadent, yani more rotten, if I would say more ruthless than the one before. The first one, and I remember I've told you this before, that they used to assume titles. The first one was Muhammad ibn Harun, which they called Al-Amin, the trustworthy. I believe that was his name, the trustworthy. And then Abdullah, whom they called Al-Ma'mun. Al-Ma'mun was the one that would poison Imam al-Rida and the one that married his daughter, al-Fadl, to Imam Al Jawad, whom in some of the narrations, many strong, reliable narrations say she was the one that killed Imam Al Jawad. We have other opinions, 3 different people. It could be possible that they were all in on a conspiracy together. Now, Abdullah al-Ma'mun had one more brother, and that was al-Mu'tasim. Al-Mu'tasim was the one that beget the rest of the filth. Al-Mu'tasim al-Abbasi, and to know who he is, he's the one that actually was the one behind the poisoning of the Imam. Just to give you an idea of this antagonist. Number one, he was illiterate. When I say he was illiterate, this guy not only couldn't read or write, he was ignorant to begin with. Even in one of the stories where he's with his advisor Muhammad ibn Ishaq al-Zayyat, they have a word that they look at. They've given a word to read, and the word is kala. Neither of them understand what this word means. And anyone that understands Arabic, anyone that knows Arabic or speaks Arabic, studied Arabic, will tell you that kala is the pastures, where the sheep and that graze, that's kala. Anywhere where they graze and that, it's called kala. But these two, this is supposed to be mentioned, this is supposed to be the Khalif of the Muslims. He doesn't even know a simple word. How is he supposed to explain Quran? But this is something that becomes a prerequisite to become a Khalif. Because the Caliphs before him, the first ones, when they were asked, وَفَاكِهَةً وَأَبَّةً, they said, Fakiha, everyone knows fruit. So what's Abba? And then when they asked the second Caliph this, what's Abba? Or in some narration says the first Caliph, first king or the second king. He says, إِنَّمَا نُهِينَ عَنَ التَّكَلُّفِ. We don't have to answer this. This is a waste of time. Why are you even asking us this? You're the Khalif. If you read the next sentence in the Quran, مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ, you don't need to understand the Arabic. Just the next verse will tell you, مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ, that for you, the enjoyment for you is the fakiha. Humans eat fruit. وَلِأَنْعَامِكُمْ, an'am, our animals that graze. So what's abba? They've got an issue with pastures, these people. They've got an issue with where animals graze because they're surprised that they're sitting in a rulership position. And thus you get the idea why they made the Prophet illiterate. You ever notice why they always make the Prophet so illiterate? They make him have no idea that Jibreel had to shake the hell out of him because he had no idea what he was doing, and he had to go see a kafir for his opinion on whether he's a prophet or not. Why did they make the Prophet so silly? So he can fit the title of being a leader. Because you have to be, you might think this makes no sense. No, but it's normal, even the Western world. Look, Bush, Biden, Trump, really, honestly. Remember once I mentioned this, one of the times I think I lost at least 2 or 3 million brain cells was when I witnessed Trump and Kanye West. I don't know if I pronounce his name correct now. When they were having a discussion in the Oval Office, I think I had a brain explosion. I couldn't believe how much intellect, was being shared in the Oval Office. Like, these are the leaders of the world. The leaders of the world that you're looking around are absolute morons. And this is a fact. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in these positions, but they're very cunning. And this is what the kings that assumed the caliphate were like. They were illiterate. Mu'tasim wasn't literate. Now, even his advisor, as I mentioned, Muhammad bin Abdul Malik al-Zayyat, or Ishaq al-Zayyat in another narration, he was of the same caliber as he was. No different than this. So the Prophet had to, like I said, fit that billing too. Another thing is Mu'tasim was known for his fiery temper. If you look up the massacre of Amorium, you research that because his mother was a Turk and his father was an Arab, obviously. Because his mother was a Turk, and when we say Turk, and we're not mentioning Turks as in another race, we're mentioning the Turks at that time were all from where? The whole region was, the capital, of the place wasn't Ankara. What was it? Who remembers what Turkey's capital was before? Istanbul. What was Istanbul known? Constantinople was the capital of the Byzantine Empire. So they were all kuffar. He brought the Byzantines into the Arab world. And not only did he just bring them into there, when he entered Amorium, he razed the city, he burnt it. And he was so crazy and so deranged that he even got the gates of the city and brought them back to Baghdad as a trophy. When you watch the American soldiers where they cut off the ears of the Vietnamese and take them as trophies, or that guy, Ben Robert Smith, inshallah, he rots in prison, when he took the prosthetic leg with him as a trophy. That this guy went and got the gates of a city and took it back as a trophy after he had massacred. And if you read the story, what they did to the women and children, and what a tyrant does. The other thing is he promoted racism as well, because he would give the Turkish soldiers that he got into the army, he would give them better clothing and uniforms than the Arabs. So you'd be able to differentiate between the Turk and the Arab. The other thing, and in Islam, just to let you know, in Islam, we don't have our race. If you are from a country and you become a Muslim, you're a Muslim. Doesn't matter if you're from New Zealand, Australia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, Syria, Kuwait, Bahrain, Pakistan, India, Russia, Bermuda. I don't care where you're from. If you become a Muslim, you're a Muslim. Whereas these kuffar were brought in, and they not only, you read historically what they used to do, they used to ride their horses through the bazaars and they would trample people just for the hell of it, kill people, children, and no one was allowed to speak to them because of the position that Mansur Mu'tasim had given them. So he treated all his subjects with contempt, to the point that he even accused Imam Al Jawad of planning an uprising against him. And in order to make it stick, to kill the Imam, he paid off some. Honestly, you know what I was talking about? This it repeats itself today. He paid off some witnesses to testify that this took place. When the false flag operations and the false witnesses. You have the guy that says, I don't know if you remember. A lot of you guys are young. But the older people that were around during the Operation Desert Storm, do you remember when they got the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter to pretend to be a innocent Kuwaiti citizen that was at the hospital when Saddam entered Kuwait, and they were pulling the children out of the incubators? I don't know if you remember that. She spoke fluent American. I was thinking, wow, she's a Kuwaiti, fluent American she was speaking. She was the ambassador's daughter. And she was saying all this stuff, all these false witnesses in order for them to be able to enter the Middle East and liberate it, or liberate its oil and its natural resources. So anyway, this is what Al-Mu'tasam did. What he attempted to do was accuse the Imam of attempting a coup d'etat, overthrowing him. So he paid off some people to give false testimonies in order to be able to execute him. Now, look, sometimes you'll see the Imams, they'll perform a miracle to avoid being killed. Like Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, alayhi salam, every time he was poisoned, he would go to the grave of Rasulullah and put his stomach on the grave and he'd be cured. Then people ask, why the last time he didn't do this? The question isn't why didn't he do this the last time? The question should be, why did he do this the first time? Why don't you just accept that's a poison, his fate, and he dies? Because the Imam has a mission. And until that mission is complete, he has to stay on the earth. The mission that Allah has set for him. That's why when you read in Wasf al-Muttaqeen, the descriptive that Imam Ali alayhi salam gives of the God-fearing, and he says to Humam, when Humam hears it, he falls into a swoon and dies. The Imam says, when he says, this is what the words, this is the kind of effect they have on its ahl, the people that understand these words. So one man came up to him and says, وَمَا بَالُكَ يَا أَمِيرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ? Why don't you die? If this has an effect on these people, these hearts, why don't you die? And the Imam says to him, وَيْحَكْ, woe unto you. The devil has spoken on your tongue. What's it? No one dies before their time. When your time expires, that's when you die. Yes, this will have an effect on this person, that person, but when your time comes, that's when you die. So at this time, Imam Al Jawad has been brought in, and these false witnesses have been brought. So I'm not going to go into the full musibah. I'm just going to read this story, and inshallah, Sheikh Mohammed's the one reading. No, you're reading the musibah. Who is it? Ahmad. Sheikh Ahmad's the one reading the musibah. After you, you're going to be reading the musibah. So, but this story is the one I'm going to. Sorry for putting you under the firing line, but your beautiful face is in front of me. What do you want me to do? All right. So when the Imams, brought into this hearing for treason, the Mu'tasim says to him, إِنَّكَ أَرَدْتَ أَن تَخْرُجَ عَلَيْهِ, that you have been brought here because you are attempting to what? To rise against me. You're brought in here. You're brought here to be put to trial for high treason. So the Imam says, Wallahi ma fa'altu shay'an min dhalik. The Imam gives his testimony that I did not do this. I've done no such thing. And then Mu'tasim said X, Y, and Z. These people have all testified to this. And these are, the play that he's already, the play that they've enacted at once. I love we always using contemporary ideas. Once they got a capture of a video where George W. Bush was talking to the Marines. And before he actually spoke to them, a woman was playing the role of what he has to say and how they must respond. And they had to be enacted. And then someone got the clip and put it out. And it looked so funny because it was fake. And then the baddest part about it is only 1% of people would know that it was fake. All the rest watch CNN and Fox, so they just believe they actually get what they've fed. Because the sheep just follow what. There's people actually read the Daily Telegraph like they're reading the Holy Quran. They pick it up, and what if it says, that's it, That's what we accept, and that's what's going to happen. So they've already worked out the play and what they're going to do, and they're all in the lobby of the palace. So once they've given their testimony, all of them, the Imam is about to be taken for execution. So what the hadith says, the Imam raises his hand to the heavens and says, Allahumma in kanu kadhabu alayya fakhudhum. Oh Allah, if they have falsely accused me. And the reason he says this, because he wants to establish that he's been falsely accused, he said, then take them. The narration says that the lobby begins to shake, that so much so that the people are falling. They can't even stand still. Some even prematurely go to the toilet while they're in that state from the fear that is taking place. So the Mu'tasim says, Yabna Rasulullah. He never talks to them. Remember, the caliphs never used to talk to the Imams in a respectful way. Like, in fact, Mansur, the cursed Mansur, would call Imam Sadiq Ja'far. He would call him Ja'far, Ya Ja'far. But when they were in fear, they would say, Ya Abu Abdullah. So he says, Yabna Rasulullah, Inni ta'ibum mimma fa'alt, fad'u rabbaka an yusakkin, or yusakkinahu. He says, I repent for what I've done. Ask your Lord to stop this. And the Imam is Imam al-Rahmah. Even when Pharaoh asked Musa to stop the plagues and he'd release the people, Musa could have said, no, I'm taking the people and you're going to die. No, it's not the way it works. The Imam's Imam Mercy, he showed the point, his point's proven. And people like Mu'tasim, like Pharaoh, like Saddam, they're not going to change. But the hujjah, the argument, has been brought forth. So the Imam said, Allahumma sakkinhu wa innaka ta'lam annahum a'da'uka wa a'da'i. Stop this punishment, let it subside, even though you know that they are my enemy and your enemy. Question here, just before I finish off. People ask, why didn't this just end? And it's always a question people ask. Why didn't the bad guys just die? Do you imagine like you're watching a 30-part series, television series. The first episode, someone does something wrong and they just disappear off the face of the earth. Now for the next 30 episodes, you're watching people that wake up in the morning, have a cup of tea, say hello to each other, and that's it. 30 episodes of that. Would you watch it? You wouldn't even waste your time. There has to be drama. There has to be something happening. There has to be a test in the dunya. If we get rid of all the bad guys, if Allah eliminates all the bad guys, where's the test? And if He eliminates all the bad guys, only Imam al-Hujjah will be left. Because every time we do something wrong, we're flipped. He wants to give us time to come back. He wants to give us time. This is the reality. If people want to ask, no, I'm a believer. I say, yeah, no. God hasn't turned the switch that high. When He turns the switch high enough, we'll see how loud you scream and where you end up going. That's why when we do dua, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min mudillat al-fitan. I don't want to be deviated when I'm being tested. Things that will take me away from the path. I should always ask Allah Azza wa Jal for guidance. And I should know that the test is upon everyone. No one's safe from this test. So Imam Al Jawad alayhi salam, he said, they are my enemies and your enemies, O Allah. But give them this moment. These hadiths, the way they affect me, and this I'm done with this, is I look and I say, oh Allah, when Fir'aun asked to get some respite, when someone like Al-Mu'tasim, the murderer of your Imam, Fir'aun didn't kill any prophet. He attempted, but Mu'tasim killed the Imam. You gave them respite when they asked. I ask you on this night, us that have gathered to commemorate the martyrdom of the 9th Holy Imam, give us some respite. Oh Allah, forgive our sins and make us on the righteous path and make us worthy to be of those that you consider to be your servants. بحق محمد بن علي الجواد صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. Ask Allah to grant us the opportunity to visit the Imam and to visit the other Imam in the lands of Iraq, Iran, and in the land of Hijaz, and Allah to rebuild Al-Baqiyah. We ask you, Allah, in this time, inshallah, if we can take advantage of this moment where they've have what we call an armistice or something, where nothing's taking place. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal for the Baqiyah to be rebuilt, and we have the opportunity to visit. We ask Allah for the intercession of Muhammad ibn Ali and Al Jawad. And I'll leave Aj Ahmad to read Dua al Faraj after the Majlis. والأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات رحم الله من قرأ السورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى آلك المظلومين صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء يا مسلوب العمامة والرضا السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن all together وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. How many times do we come together crying profusely for our imams martyred in the worst of ways. Some were martyred with their families around them, and some were martyred all alone, and some were martyred all alone. Oh my Imam, you were poison and left all alone. You were locked in a room and no one heard the sound. You were left for 3 days days, reminded of your grandfather. Yeah, you were poisoned and betrayed by your loved ones. The narrations say that on a night like this, towards the end of the Hijjah, towards the end of the Qa'dah, the wife of Imam Jawad, by the name of Fadil, she would go under the order of Mu'tasim to poison the Imam. The Imam would be fasting. He would eventually break his fast on something that is like a drink that had some lemon in it. She would poison it and place it before the hands of the Imam. It would become time for his iftar. He would drink from this. He would then begin to feel that eventually, after an hour, he would feel his organs melting. أين المنادي وإماما. Then he would turn to his wife, Fadl, and he would say, قتلتني يا عدوة الله. Have you murdered me, oh the enemy of Allah? May God remove you from this world. She would become angered, so she would leave the room and leave the house, and she would lock the doors so the Imam couldn't exert. He couldn't get any help. The narrations say the poison was so painful that he began to lose the feeling of his body. Imam Jawad looks left, looks right. There is no one to help him. He would begin to call, Ya Fulan and Ya Fulan, I am thirsty. Bring me some water. He would experience thirst on another level. What would happen? He would realize that he is locked in the house. He would try to crawl and climb to the roof, but because he had no more energy, he would fall on his face. فوقع على وجهه مغشيا. He fell on his face. They say that he would stay in this state for 3 days, all alone. You can imagine the thoughts of the Imam. He would begin to recite the dhikr. He would begin to pray for those who love him. He would say, recite verses from the Holy Quran, until the time would come where the Imam would stretch his arms, he would stretch his legs, and he would leave this world. أين المنادي وإماما. Imam Jawad left this world, or Al-Gharib. For 3 days the people were confused, calling, where is our Imam? The narrations say that they started to protest outside the house, and the soldiers of Mu'tasim would not let anyone enter the house, would not let anyone see the Imam until they would give the body back to them. But in which state? Him having left this world. Imam Al-Hadi will come from Medina to find his father martyred. But I want to ask a question. Ya Imam, you attended to your father. You were able to stand and walk to your father. But what about Imam Zayn al-Abidin? How could he attend to his father? He couldn't stand up. He was very ill. That just left Sayyida Zainab to attend to the murder side of Abu Abdullah. Zainab would be walking through Karbala over the bodies of the Shuhada. She would say, حشام من هذا الشهيد. Who would she complain to? What could she say to her mother as she turns to Medina? What could she say to her mother? يا محسن زينب أنا تعالي لكربلاء. يوم حسن زينب أنا وقلب انكسر عن بني هاشم يا يما والقمار. وعلى حسين شلون ذل بكربلاء. زينب زينب يا زينب راح اسولف لك على صار وجرى. ضلوع اخويا حسين كل مكسرة. لو تعاين عينك بنهر القطيع شان خليت السما متزلزلة. زينب زينب يا زينب يما نقلين الخبر لأم البنين لأم البنين. قولي عباسك على القبر تعين من سهام عينك يا يما واليدين. دموع الرمضة يا يما الزايلة. ظهر الحسين انحنى برد الفلا. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. أفاتم لو خلت الحسين مجدلا. وقد مات عطشانا بشط فرات. We ask Allah with the intercession of Imam Al Jawad alayhi salam, by our tears in this majlis, forgive our sins, hasten the reappearance of our Sahib al-Zaman. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعاهنا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات، رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة تسبقها بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.